Okay, I'm interviewing my mom because she used to work as special care aide at Extendicare. So she's worked with a lot of Alzheimer's patients. And the first question is, what are common symptoms?
The first symptoms of Alzheimer's is forgetfulness, doing things you wouldn't normally do. Sometimes it can end up being dangerous, insofar as leaving a child alone in a shopping mall or something like that, just things you wouldn't ordinarily do, and mostly just the forgetfulness.
Okay. How often do you see someone who possesses this particular condition?
Well, Alzheimer's is actually a young person's disease, and it's actually becoming more prevalent nowadays as opposed to before. Dementia is a natural aging process, so older people start to get forgetful and demented, and the younger people are Alzheimer's, because it's not normal to be forgetful when you're young like that, like for 50s and 60s. And there's actually quite a few people with Alzheimer's.
Okay. What are the treatments?
Mostly there's medicine that can treat the Alzheimer's. Sometimes it can work if you catch it early enough. But a lot of the medications, if you look up the treatments for Alzheimer's, they are not recommended for people with Alzheimer's or dementia.
Do you know the cure rate or the success of treatment, I guess?
Well, the success of the treatment, again, depends on how early you actually catch the disease. Some of those medications can help level a person out if you catch it early enough.
And the age range?
Age range for people with Alzheimer's can be as young as 45 to as old. Really, it's a young person's disease, so when you're looking at 60, 65, and then after that you could be considered dementia.
Okay. When did you first start noticing these symptoms for Oma?
Oh,
In Oma.
for Oma? Okay. Well, my mom, we started noticing strange little things probably when she was about 45. Just, do you want me to give you examples?
Yeah.
Well, she, for an eye infection, she always said polysporin drops. You can start those for an eye infection. If you catch it early, it can go away without going to the doctor. And she gave me polysporin ointment to put in your eye when I asked her, okay, I think there's an eye infection, do you have any polysporin? And she gave me ointment instead of drops that's for your skin. So that's a very strange thing. Her being a nurse, she's the one that always told me that, and she just forgot. My brother came home, Mom was babysitting, and she was vacuuming without the vacuum being turned on. She left you at a grocery store and superstore because you wanted to look at the toys, and instead of saying, no, we have to go for groceries, she just said, okay, you look at the toys, and away she went, and you were only about 7 years old. And then they were calling her because you were crying, and they were calling her. They called her 3 times before she came because she just had to finish getting her groceries. So that kind of thing is not normal behavior for most people. And so these are some of the things that would happen. And she was still quite young.
Okay. How was it diagnosed?
Well, basically we had to go to the doctor, and he did some tests, just asking her questions, where she lived and where, who the president was of the United States, and just common questions, did some mathematical questions, count back by 3s from 100 and stuff like that. And she actually did quite well with it. But we just basically had to tell the doctor we need an appointment with the specialist because of the other things that she's doing. So we went to the specialist, and then there was x-ray. She had x-rays done on her brain.
Like MRIs or something?
Like MRIs, yeah. And just that she had plaque on her brain. So that was a kind of your big indicator. So we went back after all the results, and the doctor said, yes, she's got Alzheimer's, and he started her on some medications, and they were not working.
Did they catch it late?
Yeah. Yeah. And we were a little bit late on it because we had never really sat down and talked about some of the strange things she was doing. And when we finally did, and we all were telling stories, we realized that, yes, So once we got her to the specialist, he gave her medications and they didn't work, so we had to go back, and then he changed her medications, and then she was really tired and her nose always ran and she couldn't stay awake, and so we got another medication and that seemed to be okay with her, but by that time it was too late and it wasn't helping her anymore. It didn't make any improvements with her, so we just stopped the medication.
Okay. What types of medical intervention has been done?
There's not a lot of medical intervention that you can do. Like really with Alzheimer's, it's just something that happens and it just gets worse and worse over time. Like I said, if a medication does work for a person, it can hold it off for a little while, slow it down for a little while, but if it doesn't, there's really nothing else that you can do, and then when it's time and they can't remember anything, then they need to go into a nursing home and be cared for properly.
How do you feel, emotions, etc.?
It's frustrating. It's frustrating when people are that forgetful, when they can't remember things, when they have a hard time speaking and they're stuttering, when they can't tell you what they want anymore. And then when they stop talking altogether, when they, come to the point where they don't recognize you, it's heartbreaking because you really miss being able to talk to that person. And then a normal part of Alzheimer's is they start to lose weight. They don't eat as much and they start to get very, very, very skinny. And then that's just heartbreaking to watch. They forget how to swallow. They forget how to feed themselves. And eventually, because Alzheimer's affects the brain so much, there's a lot of your other functions, bladder and bowel, you're not able to control them anymore. Sometimes just normal things like swallowing, walking, just normal things that your brain just does, it shuts down your organs. Your organs do start to deteriorate, kidneys, bladder, things like that. Like it's not anything that your brain controls, which is pretty much everything, will eventually start to shut down.
Is this hereditary?
I don't really know. They say no. Mom's the only one out of 14 kids that had it, and I don't know anybody else in her family tree that have had it. So I don't really know. I don't think that's ever really been proven one way or the other that I know of.
Okay. What is the impact that it has made
On my life?
Yeah.
Well, that I miss my mom. I hadn't heard her speak for 7 years before she passed away. And I just basically watched her waste away. And she didn't know me. Looked at me strange, didn't know you. Couldn't remember the grandchildren. It just is what it is, but it's a heartbreaking disease to watch.
Thanks, Mom.